Good morning, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of Kiko's Freethinkers Forum. This is episode 85, believe it or not, episode 85. And we're joined by an old friend who is probably going to be more of a regular um, speaker on this forum because we have some important elections coming up and just getting the public to understand different types of voting methods is really important in my opinion. So I present our guest Vinay Orekondy, who's actually a repeat guest. I recommend you guys go back and watch episode 22. Uh, can you believe that 60 episodes ago? So anyway, go back and watch episode 22. Vinay Orekondy represents rankthevote.org. We're going to talk about that organization some and what they do. And he also has a background. He's an attorney and he's also an activist. And I do want to open up so the audience, a newer audience, since we've grown so much since the last time we talked, can understand what Vinay Orekondy does for a living and kind of how he got into politics to begin with. But we want to say here from Kiko's Free Thinkers Forum to you, Vinay, welcome back to the show, and we can't wait to have this conversation.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And we will have a small advertisement before we start. I got to get a little ad in and just say that I want to say thanks to all the beautiful people there in the world. We have an audience 43% outside of the United States as far as our audience outreach. And that was kind of the point of Kiko's Free Thinkers Forum, was to make this an international community forum, which has been successful with 16 months into operation. And we've already reached over 165 different countries, all 50 states. We're officially monetized as a YouTube channel. That doesn't mean that you have to send me money. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying that it's there if you want to. I'm not going to say no if you send something. I'd be crazy as hell to do that. But at the same time, it's more so getting your minds expanded. Just spend a little bit of time and remember, you can't unthink free thought. And so let's start with this conversation with Mr. Orekondy and tell the audience, like, who may not know who you are from episode 22. How do you even get into politics? Like, where are you from? When do you get into politics? And how did you get into this whole game of electoral reform?
Sure. So I'm from Australia originally. I now live in the US. But and we've actually had ranked choice voting for 100 years in Australia. I worked in politics in Australia. I got in years ago, maybe like 15 years ago. I've been in the political space for a long time. Um, and I think, I've always been interested in how we can build up grassroots movements and how people can reclaim their political power. That's always been my fascination, and that's always really what I've been working on my entire life in Australia and here. And what and I moved to the US about just over 4 years ago now. I started working in American politics, but like directly in electoral politics, but it was way too toxic for me. It was and it's not great. Australia's pretty good. Like certainly when I got here and I was like, I can't handle this. So I immediately switched into election reform because I knew it was needed. And because of my experiences with ranked choice voting, I saw, okay, ranked choice voting looks like it would actually solve a huge number of the problems in the country, right? So that's why I jumped into that space here, and I'm pretty experienced with it. So I've kind of worn a couple of hats throughout my political career. One is, I'd say three hats really. One is as like I do a lot of coalitions work, I do a lot of legal work, but right now, and especially for the next year, I'll be doing a lot of campaign work. And the reason for that is because ranked choice voting is exploding across the United States. It's the fastest growing voting reform in the country. So we have ballot initiatives everywhere. In fact, there could be up to 30 next year and 6 statewide ones. So it's going to be a big year.
That's awesome to hear. And I'm curious too, as far as some of the updates with ranked choice voting across the country and maybe even at local and state level. I have an article that I'm going to share a little bit later with the audience, and I kind of want to get your take on it. So remind me if I don't mention this Wisconsin article that came out. I thought was interesting. The AP published it a few days ago. You said a lot there And we won't get into the toxicity. We kind of understand that the toxicity aspect of it. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to understand that. But I am curious, since you work specifically with ranked choice voting, before we even get into what it is, why is it that it seems like only people who are politically conscious sort of have an understanding of what it is? I mean, it's a popular topic within electoral reform. But if I talk to people across the board, like honestly, a lot of people, a lot of the guests I've interviewed, a lot of family members, people, everyday people, a lot of people wouldn't even have a clue what ranked choice voting is. What do you think goes into that? Why are so many people out of the dark when it comes to what it actually is?
Sure. I mean, it's well, for one, it's still newish, right? It's and it's niche, right? Like I think on like voting reform, election reform, like for a long time, I think it was only like, election lawyers and things like that. So really, really niche area for a long time. It's just the reason why it's taken off is because the impact it could have is absolutely profound. It's a total game changer. So that's otherwise, if it wasn't so having and so impactful, it would have remained this sort of, niche topic because most people are not thinking about electoral reform in their day-to-day life, right? Um, Right. So, and I think it's specifically that this small change can make such a dramatic impact is why it's taken off. And why I think next year in particular, like it's got a lot of media coverage recently, but you're going to see in 2024, I think you'll see huge numbers of people will know about it. So the media is starting to really latch onto this topic, but next year it's going to explode.
But as far as that's concerned, we always hear about voting being so important, though, because whether you talk to your neighbor or not, whether you disagree with your neighbor or not when it comes to politics, the presumption is that that person probably is a voter. Um, if they have some kind of a symbol in their yard, I mean, you may be on completely different spectrums of ideas, but the presumption is that that person is a voter. So that to me is what's surprising. It's still associated with voting, and we proclaim that it's such a sacred right, and everyone should do it. They shame people who don't vote at all. Um, Me personally, I think it kind of goes into the whole idea of being outside of this paradigm. It's very much a paradigm. You have to think a certain way if you don't fit within the box. Maybe that's what ranked choice voting is. Maybe it's still outside of the paradigm of thought with people because they're using voting methods, whether they think it or not. And I guess they're just so accustomed to first past the post that they don't think of other alternatives to voting or whatever. They don't see the big deal about it. So, can you kind of explain what the big deal is about ranked choice voting? Why is it a big deal?
Yeah, sure. So it's the way it works, like right now, when Americans go to vote, it's a system called first past the post, as you mentioned. So you can go in, let's say there's a list of 7 candidates on the ballot, you can pick one, and then that's it. That's your vote, right? Under the problem is that let's say there's you've got two major parties in this country. Let's say there's an independent that you really like, and you support this independent, but you really don't like one of the major parties. Are you going to vote for this independent who you really like, but you're not sure has a good chance of winning? Or are you going to vote against the major party you don't like? Let's say you're a Republican, like let's say you really don't like the Democrats, right? And you're a right-leaning person, and there's a right independent. So you are you going to vote Republican, right? Just so you can stop the Democrat from getting into office, or are you going to vote for this independent, right? So you have to make a choice, and that's really unfortunate. So and it's not just one voter who does that, right? It could be like hundreds, thousands of voters who love this independent, but because they all think that no one else is going to vote for this independent, right? Then suddenly it creates an effect where none of them are voting for it, right? So, so it's really bad for the current system is really bad for independents and third parties. It's also bad for the major parties too, because what happens is that people who don't believe there's a shot for third party independence, they just don't show up to vote at all, right? They increasingly people are checking out of voting. And that's why it's terrible, that situation where people are shamed out of voting and think like into vote. Like that doesn't address the actual problem. So let's get to what ranked choice voting, how it solves that, right? So instead of going into this ballot and you have to pick one of your 7 or however many people on the ballot, what ranked choice voting is you can rank the candidates in order of how many you like. So let's say you really love this independent, you put 1 next to that independent, but you're not sure that this independent is going to win, right? So what you might then is, let's say there's like the Libertarian Party. They might be your second preference. So you might put a 2 next to the Libertarian candidate. And then you want to make sure that if neither of them win, then your vote goes to one of the major parties of your choice. You might put 3 for the Republican Party, right? So what would happen is that if the independent doesn't win, right, then their vote gets transferred to your second, which is the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party doesn't win, then your vote gets transferred to your third, which in this case would be the Republican Party, right? It just keeps getting transferred down until you get to one of until someone gets over 50%, or it gets to the last round, right? So essentially it operates in a way that like you can't waste your vote, right? Like that concept of a wasted vote is just gone, and you can better express your preference of how you want to vote. So what is the impact of this? The impact of this is suddenly that you have thousands, everyone in the electorate is now thinking, okay, well, I can vote for who I want. And I don't have to make a calculated risk. And so suddenly you see a few things happen. You see independents and third parties doing much better, right? And building credibility and becoming seen as a serious player that you can vote for, donate to, participate in, right? And so the psychology around them changes. The second thing that happens is that voter turnout increases. People stop checking out, and the major parties then will start making arrangements with these smaller groups, saying, "Hey, look, we're more likely to win, but if you recommend to your voters to rank us, like obviously you rank yourself, get them to rank you first, but if you rank us down the line, then we can pick up your policies." Right? So let's say it's the Libertarian Party, the Republican Party goes to the Libertarian Party candidate and this independent. Say, look, rank us, recommend to your voters to rank us, below you, right? And we'll take up some of your policies. In Australia, we do this all the time. It's normal. It's policy trading, right? And suddenly politics is no longer this thing where people are attacking each other and it's like scorched earth like it is here. But it's like it's trading, it's lobbying, right? People are like community groups have power to just go and small groups have power to go and talk to each other and advocate and using this thing. I've been involved directly in that. I've gotten major parties to adopt the policies of smaller parties simply because they needed their ranking to win, right? And so, yeah, power is distributed equally. The major parties become a vehicle for smaller voices, right? There's so many good things that come out of this. So many good things.
Before I show this short video, just so the audience can get this idea of ranked choice voting, because I kind of still I'm grappling like with what it is. I understand the overall concept of it, but something you said that was interesting. It made me think of I think there was a race in New York and Howie Hawkins got like 5%, and that 5% was significant enough to cause at the time Governor Cuomo to implement some of the policies of the Green Party into his platform. But is there a danger that that just becomes a concession tool at that point, as opposed to building credibility with independent third parties? Because at that point, it's just, okay, you got a concession for someone to implicate one of your policies. But is that the end goal? Like, is that a problem too?
It depends what you think. If someone is if someone's a player, right? Like they've got a percentage, then the question is, do they deserve a voice or not? Right. And right now, I would argue that power is so strongly consolidated. in, within the paradigm that you spoke of, that the only option, like I sympathize with the major parties in this way, is that they can only see someone who gets a percentage as a threat, right? Because then they can only call them a spoiler, right? Whereas in Australia, our major parties see them as someone they can work with, right? Say, hey, look, you represent a certain constituency, a certain group. We can work with you, right? So is it a concession, or is it like saying, look, we have some overlapping values, why don't we work together, right? And that's how it plays out, right? Is that like everyone gets a voice, right? And the more credibility you build, the more powerful your voice becomes, right? So if you're a small party that gets like 10%, right, then a major party is going to listen even more to you, right? So is it a concession, or is it giving these people a voice? I don't know. It depends. Like if you see it as I see that as democracy. I still think that's a positive thing.
And I can see that standpoint too. I think what it is we're coming in with such an imbalance of power to begin with. I think that's the skeptical part of me coming out is what I'm accustomed to is like the Republicans and the Democrats dictating like all the laws to stack up against anyone that runs against them in the first place. Like it's like every election, it seems like there's concerted efforts to kick certain parties off the ballot. It's like it's absolutely undemocratic in my opinion. Like they did it in Wisconsin, they did it in Pennsylvania. They did. I think they kicked the Greens off the ballot.
Yeah.
Like in the last election cycle, the presidential election. And I'm like, how is this even possible? And the media is kind of, look, of course, they're not going to cover that to that extent because that would implicate, wow, like that is not fair at all. I mean, they're admitting that it's unfair by not covering that. And so, but again, it kind of goes into earlier, unless you're really following politics, most everyday citizens like, what are you talking about, Kiko? What are you talking about, Vinay? No one knows the ballot. They got kicked off the ballot. How is that possible? It leaves people just asking more questions because they don't have the base anyway about these topics like ranked choice voting and just the electoral reform system to begin with.
Yeah. And look, that's I get it, because they're like they're scared, right? They're scared of losing to the other major party, and
Mm-hmm.
anyone who could like take votes away from them is a threat to that. Like it's and so I don't blame the major parties as much as I blame the first past the post system, which makes them do that, right? That's what it incentivizes, is destroy anything that is a threat to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like especially on your own side, right? Like everyone has to consolidate, right? That's what the system makes you do, right? So and we just don't have to have that, right? And all these benefits will flow from it.
I like that. That definitely bigger picture. That totally makes sense. If the system was different, operating under that rationale, it would encourage people to work more across the aisle, work together.
Mhm.
But it's still, and that's not the point of ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is one part of electoral reform.
Mhm.
There's so much other stuff. Like I interviewed Christina Tobin, I was saying you off camera, free and equal elections. That's a completely different animal dealing with the presidential commissions, completely different animal. So ranked choice voting is one component of that. And so it is a complex series of reforms that have to take place, I think, for people to have confidence in this, just the way voting is done. It's such a methodical, um, intricate part of the corruption, I think. And it's not even just the lobbying, it's just simply going in to choose an option like is already presenting a problem, not to mention like who controls who gets on television, opening up the debates to people. So it is a lot for people to take in, for sure. But
Yeah.
ranked choice voting is a very important part when it comes to one step of the process. It's not the full process, but it's a step of the process.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think the reason why I'm working on this particular reform is, I think if we think of it as armor, right? The system has armor. This is the crack in the armor, right? Like, so for example, my original issue that I wanted to work on was campaign finance reform, right? And there won't be anyone who will tell you that's not important. The problem is that we're not making any headway really on campaign finance reform. Whereas this is the fastest growing voting reform in the country. And why is it doesn't require federally to do anything. It's just localities can do it. And this is the beauty of how this is happening. It's localities choosing to exercise their own power. It's movements, it's people on the ground, right? And saying we're going to do things differently. We're not waiting for federal, we're not waiting for anything, right? We're just going to do it. And so the momentum is coming from the bottom up, and that's why we're winning. And that's why, and in doing that, the ripple effects from those victories, right? Like the type of candidates that win will change. And that can lead on to many of the other kind of necessary reforms as well.
Okay, we're going to play this video and kind of get the audience up to par with what we're talking about when we're talking about ranked choice voting. Let me share it. I got to share the screen first, Kiko. Let's see. Can you see that, Vinay?
I can.
Okay, so that presumably the audience can see it too. I hope so. Anyway, otherwise it's just me
I think so.
watching it. Okay, so I'm going to play this briefly.
I can't hear it though, in case.
Let's see. That means I must have something. I guarantee you it's a control I have in here. Let's see. You gotta love technology because Zoom is let's see. So I am screen sharing, which is good. But the issue is the sound. This is within our video. Let's see. Share sound. We should be able to hear it now.
So what is ranked choice voting? In most parts of the United States, voters select a single candidate for each position on their ballot, and the candidate with the most votes wins. This is known as single choice winner-take-all, which can sometimes result in the election of a candidate who earned only a small percentage of the vote, even when the majority of voters supported other candidates. But that's not the only way of electing our leaders. Ranked choice voting is another voting method which allows voters to rank their candidates in order of preference. In a ranked choice voting election, a candidate needs to earn more than half of the votes to win. All first choices are counted, and if a candidate has a majority, then they win, just like any other election. If not, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and voters who picked that candidate as number one will have their votes count for their next choice. This process continues until a candidate earns a majority and is declared the winner. Let's look at an example. Here, you select orange as your first choice candidate, yellow as your second, pink as your third, and green as your final choice. The first choices are counted. Yellow earned 35%, orange 21%, pink earned 28%, and green earned 16% of the vote. Because nobody won more than 50%, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and voters who picked him as their first choice have their ballots count for their second choice. This continues until a candidate receives more than half of the votes, or 50% plus 1. So what are some of the benefits of ranked choice voting? Ranked choice voting provides more choices, allowing more than two candidates to compete without fear of splitting the vote among like-minded individuals. Sometimes voters feel pressured to vote for the lesser of two evils. Ranked choice voting allows people to vote for their favorite candidate, not just against the candidates they dislike. With ranked choice voting, we see more positive campaigns and less negative advertising. Candidates are encouraged to reach out to as many voters as possible, including those supporting their opponents. They can build a winning coalition with like-minded candidates to earn voters' second and third choices. It's time to fix our democracy and make our elections work better for everybody. We can do that with ranked choice voting. Visit www.fairvote.org to find out how you can get involved.
So, interesting video, and a brief but interesting video. The 50% threshold is interesting. So it's almost wait, I gotta turn this off. It's an interesting thing with the 50% because you're not really I guess it's more representational, but it's more proportional. Would you agree with that? It's more or less is a proportional way of measuring the input of the voter.
I'd be careful just about using the word proportional because that
Okay,
means
okay,
something
okay,
else.
okay.
No, only just because that's used to mean something different in election reform. That's a
Okay.
different reform. There's a different reform which we also support called proportional representation. That's all. But it's a more representative result. I think that's probably the way I say it. It represents what people want much more than the current system, because like as I said, like I heard of an election recently where there were like lots of candidates. And the winning candidate had 27% of the vote. Like that's stupid, like
Really?
that means, yeah, like it was somewhere in California. It was like some local race. And what happened,
Oh,
I
wow.
think, yeah, and I think that means that 73% of people voted against this person. All right. So and they still won. So that's what the problem of vote splitting that it solves, right? And you know what happens if you think about how elections are run in the US is that it's all about turnout, right? And how do you turn people out? You rile them up, right? So the angrier you get, the more likely you can turn people out, and therefore the more likely to win. So you get often and increasingly get results where someone who's just really made their base angry and showed up will successfully win in a split field, right? So someone who's like probably toxic will keep on winning under this current system, right? So whereas that just can't under ranked choice voting, that just won't happen because what happens is that candidates who are, can make deals with each other and can talk to each other and nice to each other can like cross endorse, right? And so the angrier you are, the more and the more you sort of spew hatred and rage, you're disincentivized you don't succeed as much under ranked choice voting, right? Because what will happen is that other candidates will probably not recommend to their voters to rank you second if they can't, reach a friendly agreement with you.
So how many candidates are we talking about usually? Can this be just can this be 15 candidates using ranked choice voting? 5, 30? It doesn't really matter, does it?
3 or more.
3 or more.
Yeah, I mean 2, there's no point. There's no ranking.
Mm-hmm.
But above that, any number, 1,000 candidates, you could do it. In fact, it's there is I've seen there are like giant ranked choice voting ballots in Australia in our Senate because it's combined with a different reform. I won't get into that, but we have these huge ballots where you sometimes have like 240 candidates and things like that. You don't have to rank all of them, but if you want to, you could, right? That's unlikely to happen in the US, so don't worry about that. It'll just most likely it will just look like your normal ballot with like 5 to 10 candidates and or 3 to 10 candidates or whatever, and you just rank them accordingly.
When I said proportional earlier, is that associated with store voting?
No, it's
It's
not.
not?
No. So star voting is an entirely separate reform. Proportional, I mean, would you like me to explain what proportional is? Well, we support
Yeah.
that. Okay.
You say you
So
do support proportional?
I do, and our organization does.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
In fact, the Australian Senate uses proportional. So what, in fact, Fair Vote, who just put that video on, who I used to work for, they recommend the best reform is to combine proportional representation with ranked choice voting. So I'll explain what that is. Right. So proportional representation, broadly, in general, the term means that your representatives reflect the result, like what people want, right? In a more accurate way. So let's say, and the problem is the district system, right? So let's say, for example, you're in Tennessee. Roughly how many House seats are in Tennessee federally? Can you?
Oh gosh, you're asking the wrong person.
No. I'll just make up a number. Let's say it's 15. It doesn't actually
15,
matter.
yeah, something
Let's
like
just say
that.
it's probably too many, but that's fine. Let's say it's 15. Okay. And you could have a Democrat getting 49% of the vote in every single seat and getting 0 Democratic seats, right? Under the current system. You could theoretically, because it's just whoever wins, right? So is that an accurate or proportional representation of what happens in Tennessee? Not at all. It's like almost half the population are voting for Democrats, right? But the Republicans are getting every seat. So the problem is districts, right? These geographic districts. So what proportional representation does is it's saying, look, on a federal level, the idea of these districts doesn't make sense anymore. You're representing a state, right? So why don't we just get rid of these separate districts and have people vote for the entire state in one go, right? So, and what that means is that you offer up, each party offers a slate of candidates. So they would offer a slate of, there'd be 15 Republicans for the 15 Democrats, 15 Greens, 15 Independents. Sorry, no, Independents will do their own thing. They're separate, but you can, it's a block. You offer a block to represent all of them at once, right? And now, in Europe, this is used quite a lot, this proportional representation system, and it's a good system. And in Europe, what they do is that often you pick one of the slates. So for example, it might be, let's say you like the Green Party, then you'll vote for the Green Party slate. Or you like the Republican Party, you vote for the Republican Party slate. Now, that still runs into the same problem we talked about earlier. It's just like first past the post, right? But with a big list of people instead. So what the Australian Senate uses and what Fair Vote says is the best system is combine that list-based slate with ranked choice voting, right? So what does that mean? It means two things. Is that you can either rank between slates. So for example, let's say if you're a Republican, you might put one Republican. Then you like this independent, you might put 2 for these independent slate. Then let's say you like the Libertarians, you might put 3 for that. So you can rank between the different parties, or, and this is where it gets really interesting, is let's say you like individual candidates in those slates, you can rank between candidates across slates, right? So for example, let's say you're a Green Party person, but you really like this Libertarian Party candidate, right? So you could put, it's called below the line. So above the line voting is where you have you can rank between the slates. Below the lines, we can rank between the candidates. And I apologize if this is confusing. Anyway, I can actually show you some examples if you want, but let's say you really like this Libertarian candidate, so you might put, and they're 4th on the Libertarian slate. You could put 1 next to that person, and then the rest you want Green, so you could just go 1 next to that Libertarian person, then go up to the first Green, and they go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just down the line there. So you get a lot of choice. It's going to be a while before the US gets it. Now, some places already do that in the US. Portland, Oregon just adopted that system.
Really?
Cambridge, Massachusetts has been doing it for a long time. This system actually used to be used in the United States heavily until the 1950s, and then it got repealed because some people in power weren't happy with who was getting elected because it was accurate. But it's shown to really get the most accurate result, right? That represents what people want. Like generally, if a state wants, I don't know, is 30% Green, 20% Republican, and 30% Democrat, and 20% Libertarian, the number of the candidates elected will look like that under both proportional representation, and especially accurate if it's proportional representation combined with ranked choice voting. Now, for your audience, I apologize if that got very technical and complex, but that is the best system. But it's fair vote, and our organization reckons it's going to take some time before we get there. So for now, all really you need to know is that but the ranked choice component is just you just take your normal ballot as it is now, and instead of just voting for one person, you can rank on it.
See, now you got me wanting to participate in this voting. I think I want to do that poll that you mentioned earlier that we talked off camera. But before we do that, so is there a disqualification possibility with this? Do you have to rank all the people across the board? Can you leave things blank or not? Do you have to rank it?
Correct. You can rank as many as you want, right? Some country like Australia does have mandatory ranking. You do need to, like in our lower house, you have to rank every candidate, and that you usually will never get more than like at 9 candidates. Usually it's like 4 or 5, right? In our Senate, it's like you have to either do 1 to 6 if you're doing above the line for like between states, or 1 to 12 if you're going between candidates. But in the US, nobody is pushing for mandatory ranking. And personally, I prefer that system because it gives more power to smaller voices, right? Because what they can do is like under mandatory ranking, if you have to rank everyone, and like what happened in Australia, our Green Party, which is to the left of the Labor Party, they were often ignored by the Labor Party because the Labor Party knew that everyone who votes Green is going to, because they're required to rank, they're going to put us above our conservative opponents, right? And so we don't have to listen to the Green Party, right? And the Green Party had to build up until they became a threat to the number 1 vote, right? Now the Green Party is a direct threat on that first primary vote, right? But so in the US, nobody is pushing for that. So what that means is the Green Party here could go to the Democrats and say, look, you want us to recommend to our voters that they rank you too, then you should adopt some of our policies, right? Otherwise we won't do it, right? So smaller parties, smaller voices will get much more power under a system where we don't have required ranking.
And also, to me, mandatory will make more sense because otherwise you're losing data, right? You're losing important election data when it comes from the voter. If no one's even selecting anything, you're kind of losing information, right?
Yeah, so actually you brought up an interest, and this is a critique of ranked choice voting, is without mandatory ranking, is a thing called ballot exhaustion, where what happens is, let's say someone ranks like 3 people, but it goes to all 3, and it goes to 5 rounds, and all 3 of their candidates are eliminated. What happens is their ballot just runs out. It's just gone. Like it doesn't make it to the final round. So, but really for me, that's not an argument against ranked choice voting or an argument for mandatory. It's an argument for candidates to say to teach their voters, rank everyone, right? And I think as voters understand ranked choice voting, they'll learn to do is they'll say that their vote has more power if they rank every candidate, right? They should, if they they shouldn't be forced to, right? But like if you just go in and bullet one person who's unlikely to win, right? That's not a good use of your vote, right? But it's smarter to rank every candidate, right? So I think over time, we need to just educate voters and say, look, your vote has more power if you rank every candidate. So it isn't just data. I mean, the data is tracked. Like that's not going to get lost, right? Like, and you'll see the software is elaborate. So it won't be reported as a final round outcome. It will just be reported as exhausted ballots. And you'll see that when we do the thing. But it's just sad if their vote just didn't make it to the final round, right? So that's why I think that the cure for ballot exhaustion is just, and you'll see like in Alaska where they use ranked choice voting, 60, and this is like amongst, it's still relatively new, right? In Alaska, I think 66% of people ranked further. They didn't just bullet. So that's really high. Like for new, relatively new voters to ranked choice voting, to understand that, to go ahead and rank. So I think given how high that was, I'm confident that over time you'll get like 99% of people will start ranking like they go to vote, because you have to choose to go and vote, right? So you're going to want to maximize your vote. You're good, they'll rank most candidates in order.
Yeah, and not to get into the conspiratorial realm, but I know the 2020 election will always have a lot of question marks, regardless. And I know that in Georgia in particular, I mean, you have this crazy system where it basically encourages, like, that's why they always bring up the battleground state crap. Every single presidential cycle, the battleground state. So you basically have predetermined like 40 states because of all the money that's spent in those states. And so when you do the battleground state stuff, that's really what the Democrats and Republicans pour all their money into and the resources, because they don't even contest the other states that are already predetermined, because they have all the advertisement and everything, all the, under control. But there were instances in Georgia where people were checking Biden at the top and they were not even voting for people down ballot, which is to me absolutely crazy that you would just vote for the president and not vote for anyone down ballot. To me, that's a very scary situation, because you're losing all that, like, I mean, you're basically not voting for anyone but the president at that point. I mean, it's crazy. Like, there's just so many flaws in the system that we currently have. And I just think that mandatory would be a great way to, if you're going to vote anyway, you should at least be able to, like, select, A, B, C, D, or E for each section. Because to me, otherwise, it's like an incomplete exam. If I'm giving a student a test, it's like, how can you do the multiple choice part but not do the short answer part?
That's it. Yeah. Well, I will say this. So I'll say to any of you who currently live in a ranked choice jurisdiction or will, you should number like your vote will have more power if you do that. So, but if people choose not to, nothing to do. And when we get to the example, you'll see it should list the number of exhausted ballots, and not that many people. Like, most people do number everything, it looks like.
Okay, so what did I do? I click on, you already sent it to me, didn't you?
Yeah, it's in the chat there. So
Okay.
rankedvote.co/demo.
And I got to share the screen, obviously. Let's see. Okay, you can see that, I'm assuming?
I can see that, right. So why don't we, well, you should vote on this. Because I haven't actually tried. Well, one, I'm vegetarian, and two, I haven't tried, like.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So why don't you go ahead and you can talk people through your votes. Like, what's your favorite one?
Okay, best fast food burger. Oh my gosh. Burger King, McDonald's, In-N-Out, Double, Five Guys, hamburger. I do like some Five Guys, okay? So
so
let's Five Guys number one.
Yep.
And I have to do the 2, 3, 4, and 5, right?
You don't have to, but
I don't?
You don't. But remember, as I said, it's not mandatory, right? But like, I think your vote will have more power if you do. So let's do it for the sake of this example. Yeah.
Yeah, because to me, otherwise, it's like, isn't it kind of like first past the post if you only do one choice?
Well, if you just do one choice, it's like, yeah, it is a bit like that. And then there's a high chance your vote could just not count, right? So, yeah. So, yeah, let's pick your second one.
Second one, let's go Culver's. We just went there the other night. Number 3, Whopper.
Yeah. Actually, I just want to show your audience something. Can you, in the fourth one, can you hit something you've already selected, like Burger King? Just we can change it.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, it doesn't.
Oh, it don't let you submit it.
Yeah, if you scroll, it should show that there's like an error or something.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think if you scroll down, oh, not there, at the go up a bit, and the other go up, go back. See, there's another scroll down icon next to in the middle there. Like just yeah. See, it says warning.
And they
Each
can only
candidate
be
can only
ringed
randomly.
once.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted just your audience to see that, just so it was clear. Yeah, so you can go back and then correct that what your fourth would. Just select a different one. Yep. Okay,
Okay.
Big Mac. Yeah, and then
Okay.
bacon. Okay, great. So just go down and there should be a submit. Oh, okay. I think it's actually on the right. You scroll down, yeah.
Yep.
And then submit. Okay, and then hit preliminary results. Okay, so what it's if you can scroll down just a bit. Oh, there you can
Yeah,
see.
I got the thing out of whack. Oh, what does
Yeah.
that say? 1,718 out of 3,434 votes.
Yeah, so that's what we'll do. It's easy if we look at it by round, right? So let's yeah, so just go to hit the see where it says round 505. Yep, go okay. So we can explain step by step how it so we'll go to hit previous and it will freeze on the first round. So this is how many people put one next to each of those options. So Five Guys pretty popular, right? But what that means, nobody instantly won. If someone had gotten 50% of the votes straight away, they would have instantly won, right? 50% of those number one votes, right? But they didn't. Nobody did. It was relatively even, right? Like, obviously some clear leaders, but still relatively even. So we got what happens, who got the least number of ones was the Wendy's Baconator. So that's going to get knocked out in the next round and the redistributed. So hit next.
Okay, so check this out. So this is like a simulation, right? Is this from
Yep.
an actual poll?
Yeah, also whoever's come to this website has actually voted on it.
Oh, that's crazy because I thought that was mine for a second. I'm like, are they copying me or something?
Sorry, yeah. So just to be clear, this is everyone who's participated in this poll.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you as the audience members can do that too. So hit next.
Okay.
And you can see round 2. So you see Wendy's Baconator got eliminated, and
Uh-huh.
those 403 votes got distributed to their second choice. So you can see 101 people who put Baconator 1 put Five Guys as number 2. So those 101 votes are given to Five Guys. 74 of those votes of the people who put Baconator as 1, they put In-N-Out Double as 2. And so there's 74 given into In-N-Out Double and so forth. So they just added on. See how the redistribution works?
I do see that.
Yeah.
So that plus that's from the vote transfer.
Correct. From the people who put Baconator as 1, this was those little green additions. They put them as that's how many people put it as number 2, and so those votes were given over to them because Baconator was knocked out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the next one, which will get knocked out, is going to be the Culvers, right? So that's like
Click
5.
next.
Yep. So hit next, and you'll see that got eliminated, and those 466 votes got distributed again, right, amongst their next choices, whatever that is, right? So for whoever put Culvers as 1, it would go to their second. But remember, that would also include some of the Baconator people, right? So it would be whoever the Baconator people, their third choice, right? So
Gotcha.
yeah, so it's redistribution down your rank, right?
I see this exhausted vote says 15, so that means that 15 votes have been just gone completely out of the
Correct, because
equation.
they may have just numbered either Culvers or Baconator. They may have just put 1 or 1 and 2, and then so they didn't put anything else to their votes. But you can see that's not very many, given how many we're talking
Right.
about.
Most
And
of
it's
the
a
votes still
choice.
captured.
Yeah, and it's a choice that they made. Right. So yeah, so let's hit Burger King Whopper's about to get eliminated. So let's hit next. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The redistribution happened again. Still, we don't have anyone over 50%, right?
And
It's a
that's not
relative.
bad. Only 31 exhausted votes, and this is already after 3 rounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and the stats show that, like that people, when they're told to rank all everything, they get it and they go do it. Yeah. Okay. So, and finally, the Big Mac got eliminated. And so we have a winner because we got someone over 50%,
Oh,
which is
wow. I see how it works now. This makes way more sense. That is a process. Like it is. I mean, now the rounds are basically once the people vote the first time around, 1 through 5, there's no going back to retally or whatever. It's basically already input in the system. This is just the round kind of organically filtering out the results.
correct. You can do it by computer or you can do it by hand.
Mm.
In Australia, it's actually done by hand.
Really? Why
Yeah,
did they
and
do that?
I don't know. It's always been done that way. And I think we didn't haven't like I remember when I was leaving the country, they were just experimenting with computer systems for vote counting. Maybe everything that's going on here is an argument against that because people don't trust it and whatnot. It's not, I mean, it takes time. Australia is a small country too, right? But it's not hard to count it by hand. Well, so the way we do ranked choice voting by hand is that we put them in piles based on whoever you put your number 1, right? And then whichever the smallest pile is, you redistribute to the 2, and then whichever and so forth, right? So you just do it the physical redistribution, like just like that. Yeah. And you can
That's
see that.
interesting.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I just think that that's interesting. But you also said previously on our first episode in episode 22 and this one that system is over 100 years old, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The more complicated Senate system that is with proportional representation, that is not over 100 years old. We've had that since I think the 40s or 50s. But just the more simple version, which is the one that's making headway across the US, we've had that since like 1918, thereabouts, 1919.
Hey, you can put me on the spot. Do you actually have one of these polls with presidential candidates?
Oh, let's
You can put me on
see.
the spot. I mean, I don't care if people know where I lean or whatever. I mean, hell.
Okay. Let me see if I can. If you just give me a moment, I'll see if I can find one.
Okay.
Ranked choice,
Okay.
presidential.
While you're doing that, I'm going to share this article here. I think you can still see it because it's screen sharing enabled. You can see that screen, right?
Hold on. Sorry. I can see that. Yeah.
Okay, but you can do your thing. I'm just going to share this article with you and the audience and read some while you look for that poll possibly. This was published, I think, December the 12th by the Associated Press. Wisconsin lawmakers weigh bipartisan ranked choice voting bill as opponents push to ban the method. That's the title. And it says Madison, Wisconsin, a bipartisan bill that would dramatically change how Wisconsin residents choose congressional candidates by asking them to rank their top choices instead of voting for one of 2 candidates, had its first public hearing in the state legislature on Tuesday. Right. The hearing comes just a week after opponents circulated a proposed constitutional amendment to ban ranked choice voting. It's unclear whether either measure has enough support to pass, but the movement shows the idea is gaining attention in the battleground state. Do you see what I mean by the language that they're using already? This is absolutely bananas that this is a thing. They're trying to ban ranked choice voting.
Yeah, and I think it's just it's not really like there's a number of reasons. I think that a lot of it is a knee-jerk reaction because it's something new. And if one thing you'll often see is, sorry, I'm still taking a look to see if we have one online. But something you'll often see is that sometimes people will not like the result of one election, and then they'll blame the entire system. And I've seen that across on both sides, right? So I've seen some people on the left who've not liked results in New York, and therefore they blame ranked choice voting. I've seen people on the right who didn't like some results out of Alaska, so they blame ranked choice voting. And both of them will say, oh, it's the system of the other side. And like, that's just, it's like clearly been getting opposite results. It's not the system, right?
Exactly.
So it's, what we've got to do is like, I think people just need to see more data to see it's a truly neutral system. It's not pro left, it's not pro right, it's pro voter, right? And it helps represent what the voters want. Yeah. So I am not finding anything online about like a president, an
That's
example.
fine. Like I
Yeah.
understand why probably that's the case. Like I'm not surprised, but no, that's totally fine. That's fine. I just I thought you had something like that, but it also be kind of, I guess, putting you on the spot in a way, because you're representing a company and an organization, and obviously I think having a poll like that would maybe show some biases, or I don't know. Maybe that's just my theory. I don't know.
I think it's not we don't run these polls, but I think what you send to see online is the organizations that do run them that's the dynamic at play, is that they'll run fairly innocent ones, like like rank your burger, or rank your, like, I'm looking at one now which is rank your favorite ice cream flavor, right? So but sometimes when we go to conferences in person, we will have, like, to show how it works, we will have like a written one, like we'll have a printed one which with presidential candidates on it. There's nothing for we don't have any of them for next year at the moment because it's a little unclear. But if you want, we could just, if you're open to talking, we could just do it on a piece of paper or do it on a Word document right now. You could rank it. The issue is that we won't get a result unless it's compared against everyone else who's also doing it, right? We would just see your ranks. That's it.
Before we go, Vinay, because I know we got some time constraints, I wanted you to kind of explain rankthevote.org and its outreach. Can you tell us a little bit about Rank the Vote?
Sure. So the website is rankthevote.us.
.us, okay.
Yeah. So what we do, and so you've probably you've all heard Fair Vote mentioned a couple of times. So Fair Vote is, like, I guess, a think tank in this space, and they've really been the leader for kind of driving the ranked choice movement for about 20, 30 years. Rank the Vote is a much newer organization, and we're building the grassroots side of the movement. So a lot of our state partners, so we've actually helped set up many state partners over, and there were some that already existed before we came around, and we help them and support them as well. Because really where the movement has gone is that in the past, we were often as, okay, let's persuade politicians to pass legislation to adopt ranked choice voting. And we got it passed in a number of places. But increasingly, there's been a lot more people interested in the issue, right? So the way they do it will, or they just want to move quickly, right? So they'll put it on a ballot measure. Sometimes politicians will want to put it on the ballot because that's where they've got the backing of the public before they make this change. Sometimes their voting system, like the constitution, will require, like the state constitution might actually require it to go to a ballot initiative. Either way, we're building the movement side because to make sure that we win it and can win ballot measures if it goes to there. So very much what we do is we build and work with state partners all around the country. So whatever state you're in, there's some form of ranked choice voting activity in like 48 states. So if you want to get involved, now is the time. You'd go to www.rankthevote.us. You can find a state partner, or you can just sign up there. You can also just reach out to me. I'll drop my email in the chat, and I can direct you to one of our state partners if you want to get involved.
Awesome. I had a final question before we go. And we want to thank you again, Mr. Orekondy, coming back on the Kiko's Freethinkers Forum. And we honestly can't wait to have you back on down the road. But this is a curious question. Is there any overlap at all between what you do with ranked choice voting and star voting, for instance? Because I know star voting has been popping up a lot lately too. I've interviewed some people from Star Voting out in Oregon from the Equal Vote Coalition. And it says coalition. Is there coalition building going on in that regards?
So we're working they're part of the democracy space, right? So, and I think that we all know that the current system is broken. I think you will find within the democracy, within the electoral reform space, people that have different arguments for different reforms. I'm of the opinion that we should all just try things and see what works for people, right? So I like ranked choice voting because I think it's been proven to work across the world, right? There's plenty of data to show that, and because it's not a massive change, right? So it's easier to get people to adopt it, right? We are pushing for a larger change down the track, which is that proportional representation combined with ranked choice. But I think we can do this in steps, right? So the first is simply move from a normal ballot to a ranked ballot. That's why I like it, because I think it's winning, and it's relatively easy shift, which can have a massive impact. And we don't have to start from scratch in educating voters and things like that. So, but look, if we can, all voting reforms are good, and I think we should be experimenting. That's a sign of a democracy that's serious about improving itself. One thing actually also just want to add on that about the momentum and how we're winning is that next year, I said this earlier, but 2024 is truly going to be a gigantic year for ranked choice voting. There won't be 30 ballot measures, but there could be, right? And
Really?
some of them will, yeah, or 30, like it could adopted in 30 places. So, and a place could be anything from a city to an entire state. So, not all of them will happen. That's, but we're tracking a lot. Some of them will be council measures that will just pass. Some of them will turn into ballot initiatives. However, what most excitingly is there could be up to 6 states voting for it to be statewide. It won't be 6, but it could be up to 6. So, which is enormous, right? Imagine 6 states in the country like making this pretty radical change to their voting system, right? So the ones that are happening are Oregon is definite. The legislature referred it, and so that's a first. Nevada already voted for it in 2022. But they have to do it again as per the state constitution as a confirmation, right? Because their constitution requires to do it. Any changes to the constitution to be confirmed 2 years later. So they were doing a part 2. So it's Oregon, Nevada part 2. There's Washington, D.C. Now the local Democratic Party is suing to try and keep it off the ballot. It's probably not going to succeed. And so I think those 3 are very likely. Idaho is actually looking quite likely they'll have a ballot measure. Arizona, there's a good chance of that. And now that's, obviously with 3 major candidates on the Senate ballot, it's the top, everyone's talking about it, saying this is ridiculous, right? And I know I'm missing another, but there's potentially others as well. But certainly, and if they don't happen next year, that'll happen the years after as well. Lots on a city level, lots of stuff happening in Ohio, California. Yeah. So,
do those ballot measures? What is the threshold? Does it have to be 50%?
To win? Oh, it depends. Usually, yes. Yeah, that's not always. Sometimes it'll be a bit different. Most cases, it's 50%.
Is there anything, any final words you have for my audience? And you may have already said this, but the most direct way to reach you, you say you left your email and stuff. But if someone had a question, and I have a pretty curious audience, if they had a question and they want to contact you directly, what would be the easiest way to do that?
Email. Alternatively, happy if do they ask questions in comments and things like that?
Comments, a lot of times it comes up.
Yeah, let me know. I can just come and answer in the comments if you like.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. I don't know if I told you all this, but beautiful people, tell your friends and family about Rank the Vote. Tell them about Kiko's Freethinkers Forum. Subscribe for free to Kiko's Freethinkers Forum. It doesn't cost you a dime to do that at all. Mr. Orekondy, I know we talked close to an hour, which is good. But I know we got places to go to. But I want to have you back on relatively soon because there are so many important races going on, and maybe we can do it to where we can do a presidential or a state senate race or something with some of the simulation results. I think
Sure.
it'd be so cool to show.
Yeah. I'll see if we can get that set up for sure.
But any final words?
Yeah, I mean, and this is something with probably a whole other podcast, is that obviously would love to see as many of you involved in the movement as possible, but also just more broadly, there's an exploding community democracy movement in this country, and I strongly encourage, like, I would love for you to see you involved in ranked choice voting, but there's many democracy movements for many different reforms. Please get involved in them, because this is, if you're not happy with the state of things, right, then that's how you do it, right? If you're not, a lot of people say, well, politics is bad. Well, then don't get involved directly in politics, right? Get involvement in the democracy movement, right? Because there's so much momentum and so much energy. People out might, like, the media might make it seem like everything is desperate, but I'm excited. I've never seen this level of momentum before and energy for community democracy.
I can definitely see where you're coming from. More and more, and that's exciting to hear all those ballot measures coming up. Because you kept saying this is going to be a big year. That is a big deal. Like 6 states potentially adopting ranked choice voting. Like that's definitely a big deal. And we'll see what happens in 2024. There's a lot that's going to happen between now and we need to fasten our seatbelts, audience, and we've been truthful with ourselves about just events outside of electoral reform. But regardless, we want to say thank you again for joining the show. This is a wonderful episode 85, and we can't wait to have you back on down the road, Mr. Orekondy.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate being here.
Yes, it's always a pleasure. And beautiful people, next week we have Vanessa Otero, who is going to talk about, she was actually the founder of the original media bias chart. And as I've said on previous episodes, I didn't have a run-in with her staff. Don't put that on me. I'm not a troublemaker, but I had a lot of questions and critiques, and I give them a lot of respect. Ad Fontes Media, Vanessa Otero is the president of Ad Fontes Media, because her staff was like, you know what, we'll do an interview with you. Like, and then Vanessa's like, no, I'll come on and do it myself or whatever. And so great to see. I mean, we had differences of opinion, but that doesn't matter. I mean, the point is that we're being democratic, we're being open, transparent, and people are sharing different ideas, and we get a better understanding of each other. And hopefully people will adopt a better understanding of ranked choice voting, who are accustomed to that first past the post system, which is honestly a terrible system. We need to change it. And this is a great way to see how people think, and they can also get a better representation of what they're feeling. And if we're going to put stock into voting, it's important, it's sacred, then we need to sort of show how important it is with adopting methods like ranked choice voting. But we want to thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.